Welcome to Scars and Spikes, everyone. Sydney and Tommy with you. Tyler is somewhere in the sea on a boat, not able to make it out to on this show, but on this episode. But obviously, a big day, so we just want to get right into it on this episode. Carlos Bocanegra, Atlanta United parting ways. Garth Lagerwey meeting the media as well, kind of discussing the rationale behind the move, rationale behind letting Carlos Bocanegra go right now versus before the transfer window. And we'll get into that. We'll get into his comments. We'll get into what he talked about during his media availability a little bit earlier. But yeah, let's like I said, Tyler, let's just get right into it and kind of give me, what is your reaction when you heard the news?
I thought we'd just be talking about a win today,
Yeah, me too.
and then you get that, and it was just out of nowhere. And there's been hints, right? I tweeted earlier, when they were talking about the manager search, when they were talking about Pineda being let go. I
Yeah,
mean, there were quite a few people pushing, like, will you just say that Carlos is part of the manager search? And they wouldn't say that he was. And it was like, okay, that's a little bit weird that they didn't say that, right? But okay. And then this happens, and it's like, okay. And honestly, like, if you're gonna do a full reboot, do a full reboot, and you're
yeah,
and you're there, right? Like,
yeah.
you got rid, you got Garth Lagerwey, right? Garth Lagerwey comes in, and then you get rid of Pineda. Now you're getting rid of Carlos. I mean, you're making a full change. With that, however, now it's all on Garth.
Right.
All of this is
Yeah.
going on Garth, and we'll get to it. But I'm a little nervous because if you look at his task list, right, and I'm sure he's got it on a whiteboard somewhere in his office. He probably looks at it every time and just is like, "I need some tums."
Mm,
It's a lot. It's gonna be a
yeah.
very busy, rest of the year for Garth Lagerwey.
Oh, this is a yeah, I mentioned it. I wrote about it on ScareSuspects.com. This sort of takeaways from what he talked about. This is a watershed moment for Atlanta United because kind of what you were just talking about. Finally, he has the opportunity to align his philosophies with the technical director slash GM, with the head coach. And he didn't have that luxury before because none of the staff when he came here were his guys. Like Gazelle Pineda was not his guy. Um, Carlos Bocanegra certainly was not his guy. So there's some misalignment along what the philosophy of the team will be. Carlos Bocanegra under Darren Eales favored a buy low, sell high kind of mentality and wasn't afraid to spend money to do it. With Garth Lagerway, and we've talked about this, could be a more fiscally responsible approach. Those prime age players, and yeah, I wrote about it. Prime age players and big players can coexist. They can be the same person. That being said, fundamentally, the two visions between the two men was never going to be tenable long term. And I think the only surprise, and Tommy, you said it, you kind of saw the writing on the wall yourself for a reason, just what you were just talking about. He did come out and say, hey, Carlos is going to be a part of the head coaching search. That being said, there are other factors. His contract ends next year. Again, the fundamental philosophies between among roster construction or about roster construction that the two men had. So it worked for a couple of years, but it was never going to work long term. And I think, Lagerwey said, he had a chance to kind of evaluate things. Last year went pretty good transfer wise. This year, jury still of Miranchuk, but he wanted him in place to kind of got along the Miranchuk signing essentially before parting ways with him. So definitely his prerogative. But as you said, now it's not now on Garth. He'll have made a general manager hiring. He'll have made a head coaching hire. So no excuses at this point. Now you have a lot of money good in the transfer window. We talk about that too. You have a ton of money in the transfer window to spend. What are you going to do with it? Two DP slots. What are you going to do with those? Four U22s. What are you going to do with one U22 that you have available right now? So watershed moment, big moment. And again, the only surprise is that Carlos didn't last the season. So
Yeah, there were some signs though that made me think that maybe they could exist, right? Maybe
Yeah,
he could stay here a little bit longer. One thing I brought up a lot is, as soon as Garth Lagerwey's came in, he revamped everything in the front office, right? Analytics, scouting, all of that. He re-upped it. And did Darren Eales do Carlos um, dirty by not giving him all of the tools that he needed, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know who's in charge of that, right? Like, did Carlos even ask for it? Or did they just think that this was okay? Or did he try and they say no? Like, I don't know. So then he comes in, and then you've got a couple signings that come in, right? You have Yakimakis say
yeah,
that he was obviously a huge part of him coming was Carlos, right? Carlos flew out
yeah,
there, talked to him, and that's why he came here. Miranchuk brought up Carlos as well. That's got to be awkward for him. He just comes in here, right? And the guy that
right,
helped talk him into coming in here is gone. So
yeah,
there's been some positive things said from players for that, about Carlos. But then there's also some negatives, right? You can't forget about the whole Joseph Martinez Carlos battle, that went on for years, right?
right,
There's been positives and there's been negatives. Ultimately, you don't want to be excited about a guy losing his job, and I'm sure he's going to get a job somewhere else quickly.
yeah,
But you have to think about it and just say, I think this is best for the club, and I think it's best for everyone. Just that you're going to be able to get the full reboot, and this is Garth, right? I mean, he gets to choose everything around him. He
right,
absorbed everything, right? Because people were saying as soon as Garth came in, why isn't Carlos fired? That was never going to happen
yeah,
day
no,
one, right?
no,
It was never going to happen. And if he was going to do what a lot of people do is, and I think we said this right when Garth was hired, was like, he's going to learn, right? He's going to learn what the club does currently, try to improve it, and possibly take Carlos under his wing, which it still seems like he did that, right? And ultimately, things weren't vibing, and he decided it was time for a change,
yeah,
and they move on there. And still, I mean, he did some good things for the club. I understand a lot of people's frustrations because a lot of people said that he broke up a good thing there for a long time. Now the salary cap might not have allowed that to happen for very long.
right,
When you had the 18, 19, 20 teams that were just so good. But that was where the blame started happening, when slowly it was piece by piece. Every piece that we loved about those early teams, right?
yeah, yeah,
LGP. Oh yeah, you talk a little bit of negative things here, you're gone. Barco,
right.
you're gone. All these guys started leaving, and then it was just done for Carlos and the fan base at that point, because you broke up the OG group.
If Garth were here back when LGP was here, back when Barco was here, back when guys like Carmona, those pieces, Gressel certainly, Nagby certainly. Obviously, Nagby isn't quote a piece; is a superstar.
Ooh, that
But
was a big one.
yeah,
That was a big
no,
one.
exactly. But I guess the question is, if Garth were here back in 2018, 2019, how many of those guys? It's kind of a rhetorical question. How many of those guys would still be with Atlanta United? And I would venture to say a good amount of them, because now, granted, some players, just want the best for their careers to say, hey, you know what? I want to make this move, and might have just been in contact with XYZ club. And we saw this Carmona. He wanted to go back to Chile. He is essentially eventually signed with Colo Colo down there. So things like that, but things like Gressel, things like Nagby, to some extent, players like Tito Villaraba, players like that, those not superstars, but it's glue guys, culture guys. And I feel like Atlanta kind of got away from that over the past few years. And like we mentioned, we want to bring players in for the long haul. We don't just want to bring them in and just sell them off, you know, after a couple of years. He wants people here that'll be here for a while. He mentioned Brad Guzan, who's been here almost since day one. He mentioned Joseph Martinez, another day one player. Of course, things end well between him and the club. We already talked about that. But players like that, players like Guzan, who have been here for a while, players like, Seattle, we've already mentioned him before, Jordan Morris, long-term player for Seattle, really cornerstone at that club, or Raul Ruiz Diaz, cornerstone at that club, guys like him. So I expect to see a lot more players like that, and I expect to see, just that direction being taken. What do you think? How many of those players would be here if Garth
People are
were in
trolling
today?
me in the chat about this jersey. My
Yeah.
name is on this one. All right. I got it for free. My name's on it. I'm not Michael Vick, not Penix, none of those. I'm not a Penix rider. All right. Not a
Oh
Penix rider.
gosh. Oh gosh.
That's my favorite thing on the internet when he was drafted.
I bet it
Anyway,
was.
I'm broken. What was the question again?
How many how many of those players I just mentioned will be in Atlanta or would have been with Atlanta today, I guess. Or not today, but been with the club longer term.
You do everything you can to keep Darlington Nagbe.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if the rumors are true about, him wanting to go home and all of that, go play for his boy. I don't know if all of that was true or not, but the guy ultimately, I think, wanted the money, wanted to be a DP. Columbus made it to him, and some people criticize them for making Nagbe a DP. Look where they're at. Look at the record
Yeah.
of the Columbus Crew when Darlington Nagbe does not start.
Yeah.
We experienced that
Yeah, we were there.
about a month ago. It's not good. The team does not look good at all. Matt, you put in here Joseph would still be here for better for worse. I don't know. I mean that contract was pretty high for the performance that he had.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the injury still happens, right? He still goes and he plays in Nashville. He still hurts his leg. I think for better or worse, there's just sometimes when a player gets hurt, you got to move on from them.
Yeah.
So I think that's there, but maybe the breakup's not as dirty as it was, right? I mean, there was obviously a huge rift between the front office, and he wanted pay increases as well, and obviously he's
Yeah.
down for a long time. I mean, he said himself his career was almost over. So there's a lot of changes, that obviously happened there, and a lot of fans blame him, and I understand that. But now you're getting the reboot that we've been waiting for a long
Right.
time. It's just I'm scared. I am very scared at this point, because if you look at the list, you got it there. You got to go bring up you got to get the manager. You got to get the general manager of the team. Then you've got to go bring in 2 DPs. Then you're going to have the U22s.
Yeah.
That situation, right? Also, while free agency, keeping players, the draft. Now, this was what Garth Lagerwey did. This is why he's been one of the best executives in a long time. But you're adding things that he's never had to do before. He never hired a general manager. He never hired a manager. So these are different things that he's going to have to do, and he's obviously going to have to rely on sources around him to help him as well. But we already said this before Carlos was gone, that the laundry list was huge of what he had to do. And now you're adding something important. And I heard Jason and Mike say on their podcast today, the 5 most important positions of an MLS franchise are your 3 DPs, your manager, and your general manager.
Well, 2 DPs now, yeah. But no,
Well, right, and that'll change. I mean, that'll definitely change. We're getting 3 DPs next year. But I mean, that's now you've got 4 out of those 5 wide open. I mean, that's going to be hard. But also, I mean, what I said last week is I think it makes the job very desirable to anybody, like to be able to come in here and both sides of the manager and the general manager, right? That you're going to be able to come in here and be able to obviously make some huge changes, and be able to really help mold the team in your version of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm very scared because I think this is a lot.
It's like
But
Jesse Spano on Saved by the Bell. You ever seen that meme?
I'm so excited.
She takes those caffeine pills. She's like, I'm excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so scared. Look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Oh, I'm older than you, man. I've seen it. I've seen it many times.
Just making sure. Just making sure.
I think I've watched every episode of Saved by the Bell at least twice on TBS. Thank you. But yeah, it's I mean, it's a lot that they have to do here, but again, it's all on Garth now here, and if we're trusting in the process, good things should come. The only comment that he made that, and he made it before, and then I think he made it last week or right when the transfer window ended, and he said it again, is he's never been able to sign two DPs in one window. He said they're going to
Mhm.
try, but
Yeah.
obviously that's a difficult thing here. And I know for fans, you want to get off on the right foot, right? I know it's not a huge time between window 1 and window 2, but still, you don't want to start off slow with a new manager and all of that. You need to get in the good graces of your fans sooner than later. And getting off to a good start in 2025 is obviously going to be, huge for this team.
But, yeah, I mean, I wanna kinda talk about, he's looking for certainly a new manager, but a new GM as well. So he made it clear, "Look, I wanna hire a GM that's MLS experience." He made that crystal clear. The manager position, head coach position, more of a nice to have, right? If you have MLS experience, that's fine, or at the very least, if you have experience in the league with a salary structure kinda like MLS. We'll get to that in a little bit, why I feel like that's a little significant. But he said, "Look, GM has to have MLS experience." So, I imagine candidates he's speaking to right now are working right now. So we probably won't hear a decision until at the very latest December, I would think, or at the very earliest, the end of October, early November. Depending on if I would imagine whoever it is that he's looking at is the GM or assistant GM for a playoff team. I don't think it'll be Seattle because I feel like that structure is pretty secured for now. I don't know if anyone will
Maybe,
make the move. Well,
but he might know somebody in there that, deserves a promotion
yeah,
there, and you could lure them away.
yeah, I'm looking at their front office right now. I'm not thinking about the guy that replaced him as president of soccer or the chief soccer officer up there. Um, but of course, Weibel is the chief soccer officer. Um, but I'm trying to track down who is essentially their player or their GM. It looks like I see director of player personnel, Corey Sissener. I don't know how long he's been there. Um, Sean Henderson, director of scouting. I don't know how long he's been here. So those are maybe a couple of names that you look at from the Seattle side. I know the Crew just fired their assistant GM. I forget his name right now. It escapes me. I can look it up.
Their fans were
But
upset about it too.
yeah, the fans. I feel like from where I was reading, the fans weren't too thrilled about it. But I mean, it's Corey Ray. Corey Ray. He was a hire under Tim Bespachenko. But maybe that's a decision. Maybe that's an option that Garth looks at. I mean, he's available right now today if you want him. But Garth said, you know what, we're not going to rush the process. So at least we believe that they're very actively targeting a GM or assistant GM who is with actively has a job right now, and it's with a club that's pretty high up in the playoff table. That would be my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong, but he made it crystal clear that it has to be somebody with MLS experience. He's not going to bring in somebody overseas from England or anything like that to run soccer operations for the club. He's like, this has been what I'm used to in MLS at RSL at Seattle, and kind of branching off that. That's why he wanted GM and manager separate. I kind of thought maybe one person holds both roles, but he's never been about that, and he won't be about that here in Atlanta. So I'm interested to see who that person is. General manager, um, it's a big hire. It's a massive hire. I mean, I'm thinking of this. I don't know what point oh we can call this Atlanta United, maybe 4.0 or something like that. 1.0 was the beginning, 2.0 was like the whatever 2020 was, 3.0 I feel like it's behind us. I feel like 3.5 is behind us, whatever. Is this like 4.0 or something like that?
Yeah, I've lost count of the versions that we've had of them.
5.0.
I mean, I would count the last couple versions in the negative from there. Yeah, I mean, you've gotta you gotta be able to bring the guy. I do think that Garth is gonna get it right. Like, he's a smart guy. Obviously, he's gonna look at somebody that probably has a lot of the same thoughts that he has, right? And try to find someone, that thinks like him, right? A guy that, he's gonna be able to go down there, have a
Yeah.
chat with, that they have the same type of ideas and be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Because I don't think you could ever take the GM out of Garth Lagerwey, right? Like,
Right.
I think I think, he said a couple times, like, we have a general manager. It's me. I laughed at that. Like, I think he
Yep.
said it twice. He's like, you said that we don't have a general manager. I'm the general manager. Okay. Like, that's cool. Like, obviously you're going to have to figure some things out here, but yeah, I mean, they're going to have to get this figured out here, fast. And, again, you got roster decisions to make, like right when you get eliminated from the playoffs, right? You're gonna have to get that
Yep.
figured out. You've got quite a few decisions to make on some of those contracts that you have. Brad Guzan is definitely one of them, and
Yeah.
that's obviously a big decision here. I mean, a lot of us don't think that it is, but obviously
Definitely
it
is.
is. It is. It definitely is. I mean, that's your last like core guy that you've
Mhm.
had here forever, and he's having a good season, pretty much overall. So,
Yeah.
how do you figure that out? And then, yeah, with the wasn't there also a point of specifically bringing up Spain? I saw you tweet that out.
Yeah, so I was gonna talk about that. So I forget who it was that asked him about, I think it was Doug that had the question, does the coach have to have MLS experience? And
Yeah.
he wasn't as committed to saying, hey, the coach absolutely has to have MLS experience, like the GM has to have it. Like it's more of a nice to have in that regard. Either an MLS or a league with a salary cap structure that is in place for clubs, or financial fair play structure that is in place for clubs. And I found it very interesting. I could be speculating or reading too much into it, but maybe I'm not. We'll see. But he brought up specifically, for example, Spain is a country that has a system like that in place. So again, this is just me talking, just me. I have no inside information. I am not a source. I have no idea who they're talking to. Um,
But it was random.
it,
It
it
was
was
random to bring
random,
up.
and I don't think it was just kind of a throwaway comment, but part of me feels, I don't think he would tip his hand as to who they're looking at or who is maybe the favorite early on. That's just me. I don't what do you think? I guess am I reading too much into that, or what do you think?
I think it makes sense for whoever comes in to understand what a salary cap is and understand,
Sure.
what the whole DP U22 process in there, because you had managers come in here that knew nothing about MLS, right? And got actually frustrated and have mentioned, multiple times that, the league and the restrictions that they had were, were silly. Like Heinze
Charlotte's
wanted to
first
bring in.
Charlotte's first coach was the same way.
Right, and you had, Heinze upset that he couldn't bring in a couple players that he wanted,
Yeah.
because of cap reasons, and Frank DeBoer probably didn't even know what MLS stood for, what the initial stood for, because he was just like, I never watched MLS, like whatever, I could figure this out here in a couple minutes. I mean, you had guys that don't understand the league, and I think that that's important. And I think it's important to, obviously you have to prepare your players a little bit differently too for all the travel that they have. It's a very unique league when it comes to travel.
Yep.
Traveling from Atlanta to LA or Atlanta to Seattle, things like that. You have to prepare your players a little bit different as well. And that's just some things there. But like obviously getting frustrated, right? I mean, obviously, again, you got these guys that get frustrated, they can't bring it in. You have to understand that you've got to work with your general manager. You have to work with Garth Lagerwey
Yeah.
to be able to figure out, how do you bring in the right players for this position? And the stories that we've heard, or maybe the stories that we didn't fully hear, that we've heard rumblings of, is just that I don't know if the front office and the manager position always worked hand in hand
Right.
at all times. And I think that that's what is going to hopefully change here, is that they're going to try and have a group. And like, I
Yeah.
feel like that's what they have with the Falcons right now, which happy Falcon week for everyone that
Right.
celebrates. Be the Steelers. The whole thing in general is that, they've got a coach and a general manager now that are real close, and they're working together on what they want. And ultimately, that's what you want. And some franchises don't have that. They don't like each other.
Yeah, I feel like the closest they had, and just the closest they've had is Tata. That being said, we learned later on that Tata and Carlos unfortunately didn't get on. together. So that kind of precipitated maybe or hastened Tata's departure. Granted, I don't think he was never going to be here long term, but his relationship with Carlos certainly didn't help. De Boer, like you mentioned, was an outsider, didn't know the league very well. Heinz say same thing, outsider that didn't know the league. Then you had Pineda, new MLS, played in MLS, and I feel like there was a little alignment there along with what the club wanted because I feel like that was the first time the club said, you know what, we have to look at somebody who knows this league and hopefully this person can get us to there. And I don't think anyone anticipated Pineda. I mean, granted, he's a first-time head coach. I felt like the front office expected sort of that Seattle magic, quote unquote, to rub off on Atlanta United. Ultimately, did not, and he's no longer with the team. But I kind of agree with you. I do agree with you that every piece of the puzzle is in place all the way down the line. And I think it's important as this team looks to grow and get back to what it used to be. He said it. You know what? Over the past few years, I've not been satisfied with where we are. We're not just here to participate. We're here to win championships, and we hear the players say it all the time, right? And I've mentioned this. Just seems kind of like rehearsed and rote, but like you were saying, like we were saying, no excuses now. Like this is your operation. And I wrote the same thing you pretty much said. He has the opportunity to really mold Atlanta United into his image, into his philosophy. The GM, the two of them will work hand in hand with this manager, this head coach, who, and I'll kind of throw this out there too. He said, I don't want a manager who's just stuck on one tactical style. He wants somebody who can be flexible and really man manage the team. So that's another key point that we'll be looking at to see who comes in. It's not going to be anybody that specializes in a specific playing style. Like I'll just throw this out there, Chris Armas, like that high pressing playing style. That, of course, he's with the Rapids, but Red Bull esque kind of manager or anything like that. But somebody who's flexible, somebody that can adapt and change, and that's who they're looking for. Who that is, I don't know. Um, Tom Bogert asked about Patrick Vieira. Obviously, Garth didn't confirm or deny, as this is right, as is expected. Maybe it's Vieira. Maybe it's. I've seen Michael Bradley being thrown out there. I don't think it's going to be Michael Bradley. Like, I don't think they'll go for a first time. I think they'll look for a head coach with experience.
God, no.
Yeah. No,
Please, no.
I mean,
Don't even put that in the
anybody.
universe.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've seen Berhalter thrown out there, but I'll say this: it sounds like the coach is going to be hired before the GM. And again, Garth is saying, you know what? I am the GM right now, so it's irrelevant whether there's a GM in place or not to hire the coach. So who is that head coach? We'll see.
Yeah. And Dan
Is it?
put, they talked about Spain because, they have a salary cap. Yeah, I mean, they want to they want to have experience with being able to understand what your limitations are and be able to figure out what you can and cannot bring in and obviously not become disgruntled as well, right?
Yeah.
But a manager coming in now can help pick two players that really don't have a salary cap, right? I mean, you got the DPs here,
Yeah.
obviously, that are going to be huge. But this is, we talk about big clubs, right? We talk about the big clubs of MLS, and Atlanta United, though they haven't been over, the past few years, are still considered one of the big clubs, right? Obviously, they're always in the list of big spenders.
Yeah.
For the league, they want Atlanta United to get good.
Yeah.
They want to
Totally.
because their ratings, now ratings don't really matter anymore that everything's locked up on Apple TV. That's a story for another day. But again, it's good for the league to have some of your big names be good. Like when the Galaxy were crap for a long time,
Yeah.
that's not good. That's not good for the league. That's one of your bigger markets, right? Having two LA teams good is good for you. Having your two New York teams, both be really good and then go really bad is not good for that.
Right.
And Atlanta's just one of them as well, where we're a ratings monster when they're on
Yeah.
TV, and that just shows what the fan base is, right? And shows that even teams outside the league or fans outside the league want to watch this team play. But
Yeah.
they haven't had really a full product that is must see TV in quite some time, right? We have moments here and there. We've had some short moments where it's like this team's on fire, and then it's not. So we need to build consistency here, and I think that it starts, in October, depending if we make the playoffs or not, which
There,
we'll get to here.
he's still very high on this team making the playoffs. Very high. Like he mentioned the win against Charlotte FC, Derby opponent on the road. You're able to get 3 points against them, and we're we're going to talk about that at length tonight. Or on this episode, we're going to talk about Jay Fortune and all that. Of course, the news came out that just blew everything up, or just scratched everything. But he's still very high in this team making the playoffs now. Whether they'll get far is another story. But I feel like there's part of him that says, you know what, I just want to get this season over with so we can make even further changes. You mentioned all those things earlier, right? There's also an expansion draft that you have to worry about.
Ugh.
Yeah, you have to make those decisions. Like, who do you expose for the San Diego FC to take? Who do you leave available and unexposed, I guess? You have contracts to worry about in the off season. You have a decision to make on Rios. Do you exercise his purchase option? Um, you have Tyler Wolf, kind of a minor player. Do you bring him back? Efrain Morales, do you bring him back? I think they will. Um, Jay Fortune, certainly he'll be back. TRA, he's an option. I imagine they'll pick it up. Sosa and Ibarra, they have contracts expiring with options next year. I don't think either of them will be back. Yeah,
No.
neither of them will be back, especially Ibarra. He's never coming back. But yeah, you have openings, so many big openings. So, I know we already talked about this. U22s, NDPs. I don't want people to overlook U22s because those are going to be massive. Those are going to be other ways to build your team and bring in young talent that can develop within Atlanta United and really stick around for a while. It's not going to be a buy low, sell high kind of player or anything like that. It's going to be a player that, again, can be with the team for a while and grow and develop and really endear himself to the city of Atlanta, to this fan base. So I'm really interested to see what happens with these U22 spots. Like, who do you use them for? I mean, do you use them for depth on the outside wing? Do you use them, somewhere else on the pitch? Maybe you find a young striker that can grow and develop with the team. A
Eric
winger,
Lopez is a maybe we could bring Eric Lopez in.
yeah, Eric Lopez type, certainly. I don't know, but those are decisions you have to make, and those are decisions. Garth talked a lot about resources. He's never had access to resources like he's had for Atlanta. At Atlanta, I should say. Seattle, yeah, Lumen Field is a very nice ground, but it's no Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and the amount of financial resources Atlanta has access to is much greater than Seattle has. So he's not handcuffed. I don't think he was really handcuffed in Seattle. I think he's able to carry out his plans in Seattle with minimum friction. He certainly will be handcuffed in Atlanta, but at the same time, he won't splash like $20 million on a player or anything like that unless he really feels they can be here for a while. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of what he talked about, change the player model. That's part of why he decided to part ways with Bocanegra. Change the player model, the type of player that they bring in. And that's why I say again, that philosophy was never going to fit between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, Omar, I know you put in here, I can't believe no one asked Garth whether they were looking to sign a striker on loan or depth for this year. Obviously, I'm sure he's referring to the international spot that they bought for the rest of the season here. He did bring it up with Jason in their conversation that they had, and I recommend anybody go out there. Um, I forget what it's, Off the Woodwork podcast. Definitely go
Yeah.
check out that. It's a good listen whether you're driving, out for a walk, whatever you want, ignoring work. Listen to it. I mean, it's a great listen on what they're trying to do, right? And I don't want to say that it's Moneyball, because in Moneyball, obviously they were being cheap in a lot of places, and I don't think
Right.
that that's it. But I think they're taking every single rule that they have, and you brought on what's the other guy's name? I forget. I always forget his name. That was also on the podcast.
Arjun?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's very smart, and you listen to them talk, and they're doing everything they can, and I think the comment that they made was at one point was that, like, next season they very well could have 3 full DP players, 3 max TAM players, and I think he said, like, they don't even remember, like, a team in MLS being able to get, like, what we're going to be able to do because of the flexibility. And it's weird
Yeah.
because every season we've gone into it not thinking that we had much flexibility, and they're working on it now. Did it cause, what's that meme, like, what did it cost?
Right.
Everything, right? Well, it's costing us a lot of this season, right? Being able to move on from these guys, getting the Caleb Wiley money to be able to get, to be able to help out here. Them talking about putting Fortune possibly into a U22 spot so you can gain more money off them when you sell them. Like, these are different things that they're
Yeah.
going to be trying to do. They're small, like, when you just think about it, if you're not, like, looking deep in the numbers, but long term, those are definitely going to help you out. So if you haven't listened to it, I fully recommend you take this, the next week and a half that we have off, and listen to it, because I mean, some of it will just make your brain explode, because I was like, I rewound a couple parts like 4 different times because I have, like, ADHD. I'm, like, looking other places, getting distracted, like, oh, there's
Right.
a dog, not paying attention. But there's a lot of good information in there, of what they're trying to do with the cap, and they got some smart guys. I mean, they got a guy from the MLS front office, working for Atlanta
Yeah.
United, and that's obviously important because I think he mentioned that, like, a lot of people call the league up, trying to make sure they understand the rules. Well, this dude helped make the
Yeah.
rules, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously going to be able to know, like, every little trick. And there was, like, a whole other thing about DGAM and all of that. I'm not even getting into that today. We still got to talk about the game, and we still got to talk about the standings. But I will just say it's a great listen if you're really looking to understand what this franchise is trying to do financially, for the next couple years.
And I want to talk too about scouting because I know people have questions about that. So Sam asked about the scouting department, and Garth said um, the GM is going to kind of look at that and see, who what changes he needs to make, or what changes he or she needs to make to the scouting department. Does the club part ways with Jonathan Spector, who's been there for several years? Do they keep him or reassign him to a different spot? Um, so you
Go
have
to the
some
basement.
options. Yeah.
Go to the basement, Spectre.
Yeah.
Leave the stapler. Leave the stapler.
Right.
You don't get your stapler.
Yeah, exactly. No, but he said, the GM is gonna make that decision. And which he should or she should, give that decision to them. They're gonna be overseeing really the scouting, the player acquisition, the recruitment, and all of that. So I definitely think that's the right call, I should say. He did bring up Chuck. I mean, that's a player you scouted. That's a player that you unearthed. I mean, jury's still out because we haven't seen him for an extended period of time. But that's a player that he obviously believes in very strongly. He said, as soon as he integrates himself in the team, it'll be much better. The team will be much better. So, what that looks like, we'll have to see, as soon as next Saturday against Nashville SC. But yeah, again, he believes strongly in this season, at least playoffs.
They
Whether
count
they make it
playing
is
as
another
playoffs, and
story.
it annoys me.
Right.
It really annoys me because
Yeah.
it's a one game, thing. I don't really count that as playoffs. I count the playoffs as if you win the playing game, then you're in the
Right.
playoffs. And
Right.
then you're sacrificed to the Miami gods, and then you just pray that somehow you could pull off the biggest upset in possibly
Yeah.
MLS history by going and beating Miami 2 out of 3, which would
I
be
feel
insane.
I feel sorry for whoever ultimately ends up with Miami.
It could
Or
be
it
us.
could be Atlanta. It could be
And they
Atlanta.
don't want us. They do not want. I told my Miami friends yesterday.
Yeah.
They do not want us because they don't want to come here for game 2 on turf. That's
Uh-huh.
absolutely something they don't want. It's in the back of their heads. They've lost the last 2 against us, right? They're not going to send any reinforcements in a couple weeks
Yeah.
against us because, again, I mean, they pretty much have got the supporter shield locked up here. But I
Yeah.
guarantee you, the one team they do not want to play, and people are probably rolling their eyes right now, is Atlanta United, and it's for just a lot of weird reasons, right? And one of them
Mhm.
is the turf, and I'm going to share it too again. I didn't read part 2 today, but there's a 4-part series about turf in the NFL, about
Mhm.
injuries and how they're trying to upgrade it. And yesterday was part 1 of the series and was fantastic. It's a good read, so I'll start posting those, here throughout the week. The other thing he
Yeah.
just brought about Miranchuk real quick before we get to the Charlotte game, he did say that their plan was to bring in for DPS was only bringing a player that would be able to be playing every single system. Like
Yeah.
that was something that he said. So like if there was a guy that was maybe similar or had characteristics of working with only a certain type of offense, they weren't bringing him in. They weren't going to do that. They didn't want to tie themselves up here. And I understand $50 million, $50 million, $50
Right.
million because it was
But you
thrown
be
in our
prudent
face.
about it though.
Right. But I understand that there, but I do appreciate, yes, I don't think this team is going to win MLS Cup no matter what the second DP was going to be here if it did come in. I'm fine with them sacrificing the end of the season to hopefully get it right, especially knowing that you're going to be having a new general manager. Bruno, I know you missed it there. $50 million, 50 million. It's good for them that they're holding off for this, and people have changed their minds. I mean, you go back, some people are tweeting, make sure you spend it all. Don't spend it all because you don't have a manager. And then when they find
Yeah.
out that they didn't, they're like, wait, why didn't you spend it? Why
Right.
did we spend it? Like you wouldn't have made everyone happy no matter what ended up happening in this window. So whatever, we'll see here. But we won on Saturday.
Yeah, I was gonna say this real quick. One other thing we have to talk about too is the academy.
Hmm.
He made it. He discussed. GM is gonna have a say in what the academy structure looks like for Atlanta United. So I imagine whoever they bring in is gonna have. It's gonna be from a club that has a very good academy layout. So certainly maybe a Columbus or a Seattle or Dallas even. Hold Dallas have been down for a little bit. Dallas obviously has an excellent academy. Philly has an excellent academy. Um, Red Bulls have a great academy as well. So you can kind of throw out some names. I don't think that would be the end all be all, though. I think it'll be good that they have experience with a solid academy. But yeah, it's one of those nice to haves, I think, for the next GM to have. So just kind of sidebarring there about what he was talking about, how that GM, the academy, will presumably work hand in hand.
For sure. Can I say it?
Yes.
We won Saturday.
And Carlos Bocanegra's last match as technical director. I mean, what is
Or
I feel like
he had an awkward dinner with a bunch of players.
yeah, that was pretty interesting. How they released the video on a Tuesday and then Wednesday morning he's gone. But I don't know I guess what do we want to talk about on Saturday because I feel like the big news is Bocanegra. We could talk about Fortune, how he's really coming to his own as a player. Terrific goal, of course.
An
Terrific.
Almada type goal. If that felt like was that the goal that was
Nah.
in? No, just listen to me.
Go
You're already
go
saying
on,
no.
go
No,
on, go
no.
ahead, go
Was
ahead.
I'm trying to think of the game. Was it the Miami game where he was running at the net and just kicked it to the other side into the corner and it went in? I think it was that. It just reminded me. And hey, I tweeted it and a couple of people agreed with me, Sydney. So
Okay,
if I got 2 likes for it, that means I'm right
okay,
and you're wrong. So
sure.
but no, I mean, it was a nice goal there, and I was happy to to see them get the win. Defensively, they were pretty solid. I thought they didn't allow many chances, which was great. Now, Charlotte's not scoring a lot of goals. They're not allowing a lot of goals either. But you get a win. You don't get many wins on the road, right? And even towards the end, you really didn't feel scared, right? Like you felt like they kind of had the game in hand, and it was under control. Where there's been other games we've watched, specifically on the road, while they're up a goal, or maybe they're tied, where you're going, they're gonna blow this. They're gonna blow this. There's too many opportunities happening. They're gonna get one of them in here. It was a boring win, care to say, but I mean,
Yeah.
they had their opportunities there. Again, they didn't take enough of their opportunities. I forget what the XG was. I think it was like 2 point something. It definitely felt like to me, and I had probably about 6, 7 beers at that point before the game even started. I felt like their XG was 16. I know there's probably a little bit in the middle between 16 and 2 point something, but it seemed like it was they had their opportunities. But man, Silva and Saba have got to finish some chances. If this team really wants to make the playoffs, they got to start doing something here. And they kind of seem to have gone cold here, and the strikers have gone cold as well. Soon as Garth gave them a little bit of credit and said they really haven't, we haven't seen a decrease after Giacomakis has down. I know someone mentioned on the show last week. It has. Your forwards have got to start scoring here. And obviously it's a good opportunity next week when we play against Nashville. Miami isn't a defensive master either. Obviously they came here last year and we put a lot of goals on them.
Yeah.
They got to start scoring. And these guys are playing for their jobs now too, right? You're having a total new group coming in here, manager, general manager, right?
Right.
And Jack brings up a good point here. I mean, Fortune's had a good couple games, so with Mayumba out with an injury, I mean, Fortune's making it a rough decision for Rob on who starts, right? Because you're in a playoff hunt. It doesn't matter who's like technically higher on your
You just
depth
got to
chart
win
here.
matches, yeah.
Right. And if he's better right now than what Mayumba has been, and frankly he has been, I haven't been that impressed with Mayumba all season. Sorry, Jay's your guy for me right now. Unless change my mind, Jay. But right now I think you're the starter until you're not it anymore.
And one thing I was just thinking about is I noticed that Fortune wasn't named to Trinidad and Tobago's roster for their not Champions League, but their Nations League matches coming up here. Granted, it's against some very lesser opponents, but I noticed he wasn't named. And part of me thinks maybe Atlanta United refused to release him for this window. I think this is a window where teams are not required to release players. I think they have the option to say, hey, you can't go, or we don't want you to go. Part of me feels like they said that with Fortune, with the mindset of, this is going to be an important player for us in the next few matches, in the next several matches. And he's been in a really strong vein of form over these past few matches, even against LA, dating back to LA. He's got a significant time with the first team this year. We don't want him to go overseas or not overseas. We don't want him to go with his national team, because we don't want him to get injured. And that's such an important part of our club that we don't want to get him injured. Even if he's just a backup to Muyumba, which I feel like he should be Fortune should be the starter, at least against Nashville. But even if he's the backup, second on that depth chart, if you lose him, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. Granted, you have McCarty, you have Firmino, but I think Fortune is your most durable option at center back, or not center back, at midfield, at that spot. So, you're really leaning on him to get yourself to a point where you're making some headway in the standings. And this is not going to be an MLS Cup team like we mentioned, but Fortune's going to be a big part of what this team does down the stretch. Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Dan put Fortune's one of the players on an option too. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a consideration that he might get put into a U22 spot,
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, I mean that's definitely a possibility there. And then Jack put, it could be the next Wiley and Bello, and absolutely. I mean, you're you can get some youth there in the midfield and have them be a consistent contributor. Your midfielders are usually pretty pricey.
yeah.
And having this option here, who's obviously cheaper, just helps out the entire roster, be able to shape it out, maybe pay in other positions that you don't have to as much in the midfield. I mean, he'll get his pay increase, but putting him on a U22 spot really isn't going to affect the team too much. But they're going to have to clear those spots out as well.
They won on Saturday on the road.
I know. It's exciting. It's exciting. Winning Wednesday has been rare around here.
Real quick, what do you make of the Pochettino news? Sounds like he's signing this week. Finally, it's gonna be formalized this week. Finally,
I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for
yeah,
any. You got to get someone in here now. We got a couple years to really get this team moving. It's a big thing for
yeah,
everyone that made that decision, right? Cindy, would you be able to bring up the standings real quick?
yeah. We can talk that through super quick.
Yeah,
Um,
I just I was looking at the standings last night, and I broke it down kind of into a couple groups. There's almost like three playoff races going at once in the East. Like,
yeah,
obviously, I think everyone will agree
and
that
Miami's going to win the Shield.
right, Miami's going to get the Shield. They don't have to do too much more. I understand that Columbus has some games in hand. I think that they don't want to burn out here. I think they want to win back-to-back MLS Cups, so they're definitely going to be resting some guys here.
Yeah,
But really, you have it as Miami, on their own, and then you've got the
mhm,
Battle of Ohio
right.
as your first playoff group here. And really, they're playing for the honor of not having to play Miami until the
Yeah,
Eastern Conference Championship,
yeah,
right? Which is
exactly.
obviously very important because Miami, they're an older team. You can get them a little bit later, right? The other and I think that's good because those guys. I mean, who knows how long all these Miami guys are going to stay durable, right?
Yeah,
They're going to have to
exactly.
go play a best of three, then they're going to have to play another one, and then get to the Eastern Conference Finals there. So if you could avoid them as long as possible and possibly have them start wearing down, I
Yeah,
think all for the better. And then you've got the Battle of New York, the New York, Charlotte, and Orlando, and they're basically all fighting for who's going to get that number 4 spot, right? The spot that we coveted,
right.
at the beginning of the year, which was obviously have home field for the best of 3. That's obviously super important. And then you got everybody else, right? You got all these other teams here: Toronto, Atlanta, Philly. I mean, pretty much everyone's in there, including New England, who obviously they've got a lot of games in hand on
Yeah, they
everyone. They
do.
got two. They got 2 games in hand on most of these teams. What can they do? They're either hot or cold. They're either winning by a lot or they're losing by a lot.
Yeah,
Honestly, I'm not too scared of them. The other team people keep talking about is Philly. They lost against Columbus last week.
right.
They still got to play Columbus again, and they've also got to play. They got to play Cincinnati, I think, again, and I think they still play Miami twice.
That's a tough schedule.
Right. So, I mean, Philly's obviously gonna have to really, win all their games that aren't those, and then hopefully steal some points from some of them. I believe they have the hardest schedule left out of all the teams that we're really
Yeah,
worried about here. And Toronto's just kind of a mixed bag, right? They're
yeah,
they're
they're
kind of up and
very
down.
inconsistent. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, Atlanta's got a chance here for
yeah,
sure to be able to get in. I think that they're going to be okay here. I mean, we went through all the games. We did that exercise a while ago.
right.
How many points we think we're going to get for each game here. But looking at this list, I mean, there's not too much that scares me. But I mean, you do have a game against Philadelphia. You do have a game against Montreal, right?
Mhm.
I mean, those are some big games that you have there. And then, who knows what Orlando is going to be playing for when it gets to um, decision day. I mean, that's what we
If
we finish up with.
if the chips fall a certain way, I mean, I could really talk myself into Atlanta being 7th. I really could. If the chips fall, I mean, they have to win, obviously.
And Orlando's been
But
getting better.
Orlando's been getting better. Toronto, like we said, is very inconsistent. Philly has a really difficult schedule. DC is inconsistent. Montreal just washed. I'm not worried about that. I feel like the only threat below Atlanta right now, the only serious threat below Miami or Atlanta right now is New England. I really do. If we go even further, Chicago, they're done. Nashville, they're done. They have no chance making playoffs.
Don't
So,
say that. We're playing them next. You say this,
well,
and we can't say these things before we play a team.
exactly. Well,
The
no, I
karma the
get it.
karma trains
I
karma
get
train will
it.
come for you.
I get it. But the point being, Nashville has been in a bad way, coming into this match. So, again, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy for them to get there, but no, if they can put some results together, who knows? Who knows? I'm not going to say they're going to win their remaining 7 matches or anything like that. That'll be really impossible. But I don't know enough about the math right now to say, hey, if they win X number of points or they get an X number of points through their last 7 matches, they'll definitely make the playoffs. I'm not ready to have that discussion yet. I know I'll have to sit down and take a look, but yeah, I mean, it could be worse. It could be worse for Atlanta.
Yeah, I think we take a look after this homestand, right? This homestand is just important because you got Nashville, who's coming in, right?
Yeah.
Are we still in competition for the wrestling belt? Has that already been decided?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I
well,
would say Atlanta is behind
oh,
in the
I hope.
standings if that's the case.
Right. We hope that you get that. And then Miami, can you pull up? I don't even know if it's going to be called an upset or not, depending on who Miami brings.
Yeah.
We've already been through that situation
Yeah,
before,
right.
right? Real quick, man, the league is bending so much to the Miami and Messi fans. I think they did something else for Chicago fans, like
Yeah.
if you wanted some money back and not go to the game. I didn't hear what it was. Also, random thought, I got yelled at yesterday because I did not
Right.
know. I was told that if you go to Chicago, you are not allowed to ask for ketchup on a hot dog. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I have.
How am I the only person that's ever heard of this? I got so angry. They were telling me about this. I'm like, well, first off, when do you go to any place and ask for ketchup on a hot dog?
Mm,
There are the pumps or the packets. Like, you
yeah.
don't ask for ketchup on a hot dog. And someone's like, well, you can't go to a restaurant and ask for it. I'm like, but do they not have French fries in Chicago? Like, isn't there ketchup on the table? Or is it that intense that you can't have ketchup anywhere?
Just not on
I
your
don't
hot
know.
dog.
Stupid. Oh, it angered me so much.
Speaking of Chicago, streets are talking that Bocanegra may end up there when it's all said and done. There's been some chatter. I mean, nothing official, obviously, but some have asked, could Bocanegra make his way up there to Chicago? So we'll see. We'll see. They're looking for a technical director slash GM as well. So, or sporting director, I should say. So we'll see. And the head coach,
We're all in the
presumably.
same boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it one thing that you could say about this offseason is it's not going to be boring. Whether we get out
Mm-mm.
without the playoffs, we get out after the playing game, or we get out after the best of 3, or
Mm.
we beat Miami and we win the whole damn thing. Whichever way that you want to look at this whole thing, the minute that season ends, there's going to be so much that's going to be out there. Rumors everywhere, right? Front office rumors, manager rumors, player rumors. Like, you're gonna have a ton of positions to fill if you don't re-sign some of these guys, right? You have a lot of salary,
Mm.
getting players out, right? I mean, you're already seeing the talks of Sosa and Ibarra, possibly, finally getting rid of them off the roster. There's so much that we are gonna have to do.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, because that offseason can be real boring. I don't think we're going to have one. I think every week we're going to be able to come on here from
Right.
November and until January and talk
Yeah.
about a possible guy coming in, a possible rumor, Tom Bogert tweeting something,
Yeah.
right? And go, all right, let's talk. We're going to emergency spaces, which we're By the way, if you're listening now and you're already on Spaces, we're coming back. We're going to come back on there. I'm sure a lot of people want to do this. We did this with Pineda when Pineda was let go. We started this, and then we moved over. Obviously, a lot of you are going to want to talk about it, not just hear us talk about it. So we're gonna go on Spaces after this. Shut this down. Come back. Come join in the conversation. Should be fun. Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too.
This is a fun week. It's a fun week. Without Atlanta United, I don't have to stress. I'm actually going to tailgate at the Columbus Crew.
Are you?
Game. I'm going to Weezer on Saturday. It's my daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go down there. Columbus is playing Seattle. It's a Cucho-less Columbus Crew playing Seattle, so that game does not. That game's there, but I told a couple of my crew friends that we'd go down there and take my daughter to celebrate her 15th birthday. 15th birthday, yeah, 15th birthday.
You're asking me.
Thinking about it. Thinking about it. Yeah, he's 16, so she's turning 15. Yeah. We're gonna take her and tailgate. And Milan, I think you're a little late, but that was something we brought up. Is that this is a long laundry list. So bring that thought to Spaces. We'll talk about that because I think that's a good talking point to start off with. So if you're in there, jump in there first, and I'll let you in. I promise. Even if Sydney says don't let him in first, I'm not going to listen to him. I'm going to let you in first. And Edgar, hell yes, it is Falcons week. It's Kirk Cousins week. Nothing could go wrong with Kirk Cousins. He hasn't jinxed any teams in this league at all. But I promise you, it's Kirk Cousins Day, and we're going to beat the Steelers. Whew.
Well, I think that's it.
We thought we had nothing to talk about when we woke up this morning.
We woke up, but obviously we did, and of course we'll be continue to cover all things Atlanta United. As again, this is a pivotal moment, pivotal period for Atlanta United, and we'll be here. But thanks everyone for joining us. As Tommy said, we'll be on Spaces right after this. But thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us. I should say appreciate having you on with us. And yeah, we'll talk to you next time. We have a match to talk about against Nashville SC. Another derby match.
Nashville. I hate country music. I can't get into it. And then the stupid Nashville Predators, whenever they score a goal in hockey, they sing like I like it, I love it. Oh my God, that is the worst. I would not be able to go to a Nashville Predators game. I would somehow end up in a fight with every single one of their fans. They have all these chants, and it's fun with soccer, but no, I can't handle it with hockey. I can't handle that team. I hate Nashville, and then I hate their field for ruining Joseph Martinez's career. I will never, and I threw up on what's the street in Nashville?
Broadway.
I threw up on that one. That's a story for another day, but I threw up there my only time ever there. So Nashville has not treated us or me very well.
It's good to know.
Story time with Tommy. All right, we'll see you on Spaces, everyone.
So yeah, I have no opinion of Nashville either way. I mean, I like it, but apparently you have a negative opinion of it. All right, see you soon.